Welcome to Turning the Tables Healthy Cooking class. This is a project of Cornell Cooperative Extension Ulster County, the Ellenville Regional Rural Health Network, and Stick to Local Studio. I'm Maria Reidelbach. So it's really easy to make supper soup. The first step is to saute some onions or garlic or both in some oil. The second step is then to add some stock, to add some tomatoes, a little salt and pepper, to add any whole grains that you're using, and lentils if you're using lentils. So you let those cook a bit. The third step then is to add your vegetables, fresh vegetables, mushrooms, some canned beans if you're using them. Keep simmering until all that is done. And then the fourth step, serve it forth into a bowl, sprinkle with some fresh herbs or a little cheese or whatever else your heart desires. Here are a few carrots, also in the umbelliferae family, some brown rice, some green lentils, a can of tomatoes. Also, we've got a little bit of instant bouillon. We've got some salt and pepper. We've got some oil, sunflower oil, and as far as equipment goes, we've got just a couple of knives, a chef's knife and a paring knife. We've got a nice cast iron pot, but you can use any kind of cooking pot with a lid. And here we go. First job is to clean the vegetables. This celeriac root came right from the farm, and it has some gnarly roots on it, so it is very dirty. I am going to clean that ferociously with a scrub brush to get as much of that dirt off as I can. And the other vegetables really only need a rinse. So I'm going over to the sink and I'm going to give everything a good wash down. So the next step is I'm going to just trim off the leaves off the celeriac root and off of the kohlrabi. Those are going to go into the compost. And the first step is to saute onions or garlic in some oil. So I'm going to peel the onion, chop it into bite-sized pieces. I'm going to take off the stem end, the root end, and then the stem end. Peel the papery skin off. It's always a little bit of a ticklish job. Sometimes it's uneven and you'll find that skin is papery on one side and fleshy on the other. So, just use your judgment, you'll get it. So I'm just going to kind of like peel that off. Now you can save these trimmings for soup. There's lots of flavor in those onion skins and carrot parings and other things. So you can put them in a bowl and then put them in a plastic bag and put them in your freezer, save them up, and when you've got a big bag full, you can make your own vegetable stock. Or add some bones and make chicken or beef or pork stock. They've got lots of flavor and it's better than wasting them. So there we go, saving those onion skins. And the way that I like to cut onions is I like to cut them down the middle, right through the core, and then slice them. And onions are particularly neat because they're kind of pre-sliced inside because they've got those layers. So then I just slice them crosswise, and that way they're all in bite-sized pieces without any kind of random hacking. I mean, if you're in the mood for random hacking, you could do that, but this is quicker and easier. Plus, you can kind of show off your mad knife skills. Make sure your knife is sharp. That's going to really help. There we go. We've got those 2 onions chopped up nice and quickly. Onions really keep a long time, so it's good to have a bag of them on hand. Store them someplace cool and dry. Don't need to be in the fridge. So I've got those onions all chopped up. I'm going to put them in my pot, get them started. I'm going to add a little bit of sunflower oil. This happens to be local Hudson Valley sunflower oil. It's pricey, but what I did was a friend of mine and I went in on a gallon of it and split it up, and it's much less expensive that way. So, and it really, sunflower oil tastes great. So here we go. The onions go into the pot, and I'm going to give that a stir just to distribute everything. And I've got that over medium-high heat. Now, while that's cooking, I am going to work on the other vegetables. Now, here's a kohlrabi, and you may not be familiar with this vegetable, but it's a really, really nice vegetable. Farmers like it because it's easy to grow and it gets ripe early in the summer, but you can also grow it through the fall. It's crispy, it's juicy, you can eat it raw, you can eat it cooked. It's really a nice, versatile vegetable all year round. So here I'm just trimming off the thick skin, which is going to go into my vegetable trimmings bowl. And to do that, you can either use a paring knife or you can use a vegetable peeler. And here I'm showing how to use a vegetable peeler. Whichever way you prefer is what works. So I'm getting all of that peel off. Last little bit, and there we go. Oh, missed a spot. There we go. And there the parings go into the bowl. All set here. Now this is like a big crisp ball. Give those onions a stir. You can see they're bubbling away there. They're starting to smell really good. And now I'm going to cut this kohlrabi up, slice it through, and then again, like the onion, I'm just cutting it in slices. I'm going to give it a little taste because I want to see how sweet it is, and just because I want a snack. Put some salt on it. Yummy. So I'm going to cut it into cubes now. And you can cut it into really any shape you want. You just want it to be bite-sized so that when you eat your soup, you're having like a happy experience. Some of the bigger ones I'm now cutting in half. Going for the second half. Slicing that up. There we go, that's all set. A couple bigger pieces looking okay. Now for the carrots. Now these are funny carrots. They're funny little carrots. These are from the farmer's market. Now when you're shopping at the farmer's market, you're going to find vegetables that vary in their appearance. It's not like the supermarket where everything looks pretty much the same. Don't be afraid, because vegetables from the farm often do look very different. These carrots have split up into littler carrots. They look like little legs or nubbins. And you know, who knows why? Maybe they hit a rock or something, but they're nothing to be afraid of. It's just a little bit of variety in the vegetable world. And as long as you can peel it and it looks good and there's no insect infestation or rotting, it's good to eat. So I'm here using a vegetable peeler to peel those carrots. Now, carrots have very, very thin skin. When you cook them, does have a noticeable change of texture. So it's really up to you whether you want to peel them or not. I go ahead and peel them because I'm saving those peels to use for soup stock, so they're not going to be wasted. But really, if you're short on time or you don't care about the peels, as long as they're well scrubbed, you can just leave those peels on. So there we go. Getting the last bits off into the bowl and cutting off the tip. Now, when you're trimming vegetables, you only need to cut off a very small amount. Don't waste by cutting more off than you need. And there are those funny little nubbins. And I am just going to cut these carrots up also into bite-sized pieces, giving the onions another stir. Looks like they got pretty brown there while I was focusing on the carrots. Next step is to add the longer cooking ingredients, the lentils, the whole grains, the can of tomatoes, and the water or soup stock, and some salt and pepper, and turn the heat down. So I'm opening up a can of tomatoes that I made from Fiddlehead Farm tomatoes in the summer. Very proud of that. There go the tomatoes. There goes the brown rice. And there go the lentils. And next comes some water. 6 cups. And you can see it's still bubbling because that iron pot holds so much heat. And I am just going to add a little bit of instant bouillon. You know, if you ever purchase chicken stock, you should know that the chicken stock that comes in a box or in a can that's that's regular strength, the companies use concentrate to make that. So you can really save money and space in your cabinet by buying the concentrate yourself. This is the kind called Better Than Bouillon. It comes in an organic variety. And this way you can make just as much stock as you need, and you don't have a half of a can of stock or half a box of stock sitting in your fridge. Adding a little bit of salt there. Adding some pepper. And so now that is just going to bubble away while I work on these ingredients. Putting the lid on. Always put the lid on pots whenever it's appropriate, which is whenever you're cooking something for a long-term cooking, except for maybe pasta, because if you put a lid on pasta, it will boil over. But yeah, it saves energy. It'll save you time. So I'm cutting the carrots into little coins. There they go. There goes that tiny little carrot leg. Yarg. Carrots are such a great color, and they've got lots of vitamin A and carotene for good eyesight, among other things. There we go. Of course, kids love carrots, partly for the color, I think. Carrots keep a long time, so it's a good staple to have. They should be stored in the refrigerator. Here we go, giving that soup a stir. Now, after your whole grains have cooked for maybe 10-15 minutes, that's when you're going to want to add your hearty vegetables. This is that gnarly celery root, and it's still looking kind of dirty, despite the fact that I cleaned it with a brush. So I am trimming all those little rootlets and root hairs off. And, you know, this is a very gnarly looking vegetable, but because it tastes so good, it's really worth braving the wild looks of it. I'm trimming off all of the skin here, going into my soup stock pot. And the inside of celery root or celeriac is not as juicy and crisp as the kohlrabi is, but still has an amazing flavor and crunchiness. It's really good raw. You can grate it and put it into salads. It's got so much flavor, but it holds up also in soups. And you know, you can, if you have a big one, you can even roast it whole for a really interesting main dish or side dish. It's kind of turkey-like. So getting that all peeled off, and now I'm going to trim the green bits off. You lose a lot of the celery root when you trim it. That's just the way it goes. But it's not truly lost if you put it in your soup stock pile. Now I'm going to basically cut this. I gave it another rinse, and I'm going to cut this the way I cut the kohlrabi, just a little thinner because it's a bit denser. Cutting it in half now. I think that trimming and cutting up vegetables is a really nice way to explore their textures and their juiciness. So just keep your senses aware as you do this, and keep tasting, because you're going to learn a lot, and it's also more fun that way. Just sort of look at it as a form of play. Cutting that up. There we go, all set there. Okay, so I've got my pile of longer cooking vegetables. Soup's madly simmering there. That means I should turn it down a little bit. One thing about heating liquids is that, you know, as soon as it's boiling, it's not going to get any hotter than that. It has reached the maximum temperature it's going to get. So you might as well turn your heat down to the very lowest point that will sustain that bubbling. It will save you energy and save you money on your energy bill. And, you know, it will help the earth because you're using less fuel. The next step is to keep simmering. We're adding the vegetables now that take a little while to cook. There they go. The lentils and the whole grains are probably about half done, maybe a little more than that. And the way that you can tell is you taste them. And here we go. You should be tasting your cooking all along. You know, it will help you adjust the seasonings, and also will help you learn the rate at which things cook. Because cooking is a lifelong process of learning. I mean, luckily, the entry ramp is pretty easy, but it is amazing because it can really keep you engaged and not bored if you pay attention, and, you know, if you're cooking by the seasons and you're trying out new ingredients and new proportions and that kind of thing. I kind of have a very low threshold of boredom, and I never get bored of cooking. So I'm cleaning up my parsley now. I'm going to add some to the soup at this point, but I'm also saving some for the end so it can be green and uncooked. Chopping that parsley up. Stems went into my soup stock pile. There we go. Giving it a stir. Giving it a taste. I think I'm pretty happy with it at this point. Nope, it needs something more. I'm going to add some dried rosemary. So I'm kind of crunching that up in my hands, and I'm just like sprinkling that over. This is rosemary I grew in my garden last summer, and when fall came, I just cut it off and dried it, and threw out last year's rosemary, dried rosemary, and put this in the jar. And it's much fresher than anything you could buy. Giving it a stir. And now I'm going to chop up these collards because they take less time to cook. They don't need to go in with the other vegetables. Now this is a fall or winter vegetable hearty soup. If you made this in the spring, you'd have really different vegetables. You'd have probably some spring spinach and maybe peas. And those things mostly take less time to cook. Other vegetables that we could use in the winter would be things like winter squash or the other brassica family vegetables like cabbage, potatoes, sweet potatoes. Okay, so I'm just stacking and folding these collard greens to make them easier to cut, and I'm cutting them into kind of ribbons. Now the southern way of cooking collards is to cook them low and slow, but you don't have to do that. I kind of like them cooked quickly. So I'm going to, wait and add those just before the soup is done. So here we go. You can see it's not bubbling as much because I've turned it down, yet it's still hot, and waiting for those vegetables to get cooked. Now, one of the essential ingredients for a really good supper soup is that can of tomatoes. And why? It's because tomatoes are an especially umami vegetable. Umami is the fifth flavor along with salty, sour, bitter, and sweet. And umami is the taste of meatiness. It's going to give your soup that wonderful mouth fullness. So no matter what the season, you're going to want to add that can of tomatoes, or a few fresh tomatoes if it's summertime. So now I'm chopping up the rest of my parsley for a little sprinkle on top when the soup is done. And giving it another stir. You want to keep your eye on it. You don't have to tend it very much, but every now and then check it out. Each time you make this soup, it'll be different. So I turn the heat up so now you can see it's bubbling a little more. And there's some time lapse here, so it's not like this is happening in real time. I'm checking out now the vegetables and the lentils and the brown rice to see how they're doing and how done they are. Got a little sample of everything there, and I'm going to let that cool, and then I'm going to taste it. And there's a little bit of celery root, so checking all those guys out. It's one of your jobs as a cook, but it's also one of your pleasures as a cook. is that you get to taste everything as you go along. So it looks like I'm pretty happy with those. Back in they go. And those are all pretty much done, so I'm adding my collard greens. And collard greens will really only take a few minutes to cook. I'm going to add a little more salt because I can taste that it's not salty enough. You can salt things to taste. Now, salt is something that you don't want an excess of in your diet. But the reason most people have too much salt in their diet is because it's coming from processed foods and from restaurant foods. There really is no way you can add enough salt to your own home-cooked food to be too much salt, because it would taste way, way salty. Somehow in processed food they manage to disguise the salt. I don't know how that works, but that is a fact. But food does need salt to taste good. The last step, put your soup in a bowl and add some fun sprinkles. And here I've added a slice of whole grain bread. I am going to ladle the soup into the bowl. Pretty darn hot. Well, one of the wonderful things about soup is that it's even better on the second day. So when you make soup, make plenty, because you can have it again and you don't have to do any extra cooking. You'll want to refrigerate your leftovers after they've cooled. So I'm going to check this out. It looks delicious. At this point, the house smells really nice because you've got that wonderful soupy fragrance. And yeah, this is a really good soup. I would love to hear how your soup turns out. You can get this recipe at turningthetablescookbook.com. Let me know your results at our social media on Facebook, on Instagram, Twitter, or at our website. Thank you.